Anne-Katrin Gramberg comes from a small island in the North Sea, Norderney, and has lived in Alabama since the early 1990s. A stalwart women's rights and women's leadership advocate, she has served Auburn University in many positions, most visibly as Dean of the College of Liberal Arts and now as Senior Counsel to the President. Active in the business community as well as in academia, she shares with us her story of living between cultures in more than one way and how convictions may or may not help us change even small pockets of society.
Anna, thank you so much for taking the time to speaking with me today about conviction. You've been a leader in academia and have taken on a number of roles at Auburn University and elsewhere. And I want to learn a little bit more about your path to your convictions. And I want to start with the picture of you and your mom that you recently posted in the north of Germany. And I wonder if you can tell me a little bit about your youth and possible convictions that stem from that.
It's my youth. You want to know it all? That takes a while. Anyway, I was born on a small island in northern Germany called Norderney, and I grew up with my grandparents, and my grandmother ran a bed and breakfast. And you know, the way it was done back then, she did full-time cooking. She did the breakfast, the lunch, the dinner for the guests, and the cleaning and everything. She did everything herself. I admired her very much. A strong woman, and she worked all the way until she died when she was 80 years old. Mm-hmm. So that made a big impression on me.
Mm-hmm. And what was it like growing up with what sounds like a role model? I mean, is that something that is part of your life today?
Oh, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. I mean, just a very strong work ethic and, you know, kind of a can-do attitude. Mm-hmm. Not a lot of tolerance for whining, and you know, just kind of pushing forward.
So you are now senior counsel to the president of Auburn University. Yes. And a very successful former dean with millions of fundraising, with yes. changing the College of Liberal Arts, one would argue from the core. Which convictions helped you build this path? And did you accumulate any costs? Were there any resistances you had to fight through?
Definitely. So I am actually just giving you a little bit of a, you know, when surveys are done on deans, you get the, you know, opinions of faculty, and the two characteristics that were assigned to me most often were fair and fearless. And I like it. Mm-hmm. So one of my big convictions is that all people should be treated fair, mm-hmm. that all people are equal. Mm-hmm. And I don't have to tell you that there can be a lot of resistance to that principle.
Absolutely.
And fearless, because I fearlessly led the charge of installing programs to help make that happen.
Mm-hmm. Such as?
Created the Women's Leadership Institute when I was a chair in foreign languages, so way back. Enhanced that as a dean, and just, you know, there was a time when there were absolutely no programs for women. Nothing. I mean, we were doing absolutely nothing. Even women's studies was just a club that met every now and then on a social level. And, you know, I came from the University of Michigan. I was used to a strong women's studies program, a strong women's leadership program, you know, women being very prominent. When I came to Auburn, I didn't find that at all. Mm-hmm. So I felt that it needed some air blown into the process.
Mm-hmm. So when you initiated that enthusiasm, goals, benchmarks, if you will, for what women's studies and women's leadership should be, what kind of following these convictions, and it sounds like the role model from your youth also had a little bit to do with that. Mm-hmm. Did you encounter any resistance?
I absolutely did. I mean, it came down to some very elementary steps, starting with being the chair and then continuing when I was the dean. There was, and this sounds like we're talking about a different century, which we actually do, but it feels like we were 2 centuries back, where there was resistance to women getting promoted and tenured. And I looked into that process very closely. When I was a dean, I made sure I had a balanced committee and everybody got fair treatment. And it was just unbelievable and amazing what kind of arguments would be brought in favor of one and against another. For instance, a certain publisher would be called prestigious. The same year, 2 people coming up in the same department called prestigious for the man, and for the woman was called, well, if it's in a foreign language, it's prestigious, but she published it in English. So for that, this publisher is not prestigious at all. So ridiculous arguments where it just really needed to put the mechanics in place that everybody got fair treatment. Is there a cost? Of course. You know, the people that have been entitled to the privilege, everything they, you know, all the shots they called would come through and no resistance would be easy. You have all the power. You say, I'm not going to have you, I'm going to have you, and nobody questioned it. So yeah, the privilege was taken away from a whole group of people. They didn't like it. Of course there was resistance. That's a cost, but you know, it's a cost that you have to pay. If you want to right a wrong, there's always somebody who loses privilege.
Mm-hmm. How did you push through that? I mean, did you ever have any doubts? Did you ever feel like this is too much? I don't have the energy. I don't have the perseverance. Did you ever feel there's a moment where you have to give up?
Not for the first many years. So first of all, I have to tell you that it takes a lot of work. I was really truly working around the clock, getting up early, going to bed late, working weekends. I mean, I just did not have a life. That was a cost, actually. But I didn't mind. In the beginning, I felt that I was making progress. What really got to me was that, obviously, I operate in the Southeast, and you know that many people have a religious conviction that, you know, women shouldn't be leaders, women are not equal. Now, they're not going to come and tell you this, but I did not feel that everybody was on board with it who should be on board with it. So there was a lot of undermining, treating people equal, you know, through backstabbing. And, you know, I would even have conversation with young women, with our students, and they would tell me that's overdone. Some women would tell me that they're really there to look for a husband, that they have no intention of leading, that women shouldn't be leading, that's not their role. And that's a little frustrating. You know, when you're out there really fighting very hard for equality and fair treatment, and then the very people that you're fighting for are telling you that they're really not even interested in it. Mm-hmm. That gets frustrating. Yeah. And that took the air out of my energy in the end. Mm-hmm. So
your professional background, leading into the next question that's related to some degree, your professional background is in business and in liberal arts. So you have the benefit, you have the luxury of looking at higher education from different viewpoints. Yes. What would you change about higher education today?
You know, one radical change I would have, mm-hmm. before anybody becomes a professor, everybody should be in the other world for 5 years. Mm-hmm. I think that would greatly help.
The other world being business?
Anything outside of academia. Okay. Anything outside of academia. I, you know, for folks who go to school and go straight through, get their PhD and then become a professor, it'd be nice if they had a greater knowledge of what is going on outside of academia. Mm-hmm. And it would help to prepare our students.
Does that mean that you have made the observation that academia itself is sort of a cloistered culture?
Let's say you're working in a town same company all your life, and then you're being asked what is going on internationally.
Right.
I mean, theoretically you know it, but you've actually never done it.
Mm-hmm. So just a broadening of experiences.
Yes, the broadening, looking in different areas. And, most of our students are going off into a world that is not in academe.
Correct.
And it'd be great to know something about it when you're preparing your students to enter this world. Mm-hmm. And it would give you a different perspective. Mm-hmm. And just generally speaking, there is a resistance in some areas in academe to incorporating practical aspects. Mm-hmm. So it's very nice for a lot of students to be educated very theoretical, but most of us have to make a living. Mm-hmm. So some practical application about, hey, this is what you're going to need is very helpful when we are educating our students.
Most would argue today that what they need is critical thinking, being able to research.
Yeah. Yes.
And that's what academe prepares them for.
Right, but what does it hurt if you do that and at the same time, you combine your specific area with something that gives our students some practical skills? Mm-hmm. I am a big proponent of combining like languages, for instance, with business or engineering, or, just think about what do they really need when they get out. Mm-hmm. And, it's wonderful to have a foreign language, and I believe it's very helpful if you're in a different country, but what you really need is a lot of knowledge about the different cultures. You can even have a global studies or European studies, just giving students a lot of helpful information about what they're practically entering. And, to know a thing or two about finance or marketing, that is not going to keep you from getting a job.
No, probably not.
Right,
not in this day and age.
Right.
You once said, "I'm not good at lying."
Yes.
If I don't think it makes sense, able to say, "I can't sell this," it makes no sense.
Right.
Tell us more about this and the conviction behind it.
Yes. Certainly, if you're a dean, you come into situations where you're being asked to cover up something. Mm-hmm. And this does not have to be negative. It's just, sometimes you need to shelter somebody, something that you know about somebody, maybe a mental illness. At the same time, you need to protect somebody, but you can't tell them why. So it would be my preference to just go into a group and say, look, this is happening because here's the truth. But then you just can't tell the truth. And that's, sometimes you can see where it's for the better, but, there are very delicate situations where it's a gray zone, where I would go, why don't we tell them the truth? But then, for some strange reason, you could be sued, or you violating somebody else's rights on whatever. And then you have sleepless nights.
Yeah.
So it just happens.
It's contextual.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes.
What personal or political convictions fuel your current work?
Well, I believe in giving our students an opportunity to have access to international roams. I can't think of the right word right now. To have an understanding of the global world, of international problems, international settings, meet people that come from all kinds of countries and have experience living in different countries. Also meet them to make contacts. Maybe get an internship or get a lead on a position or a lead on an exchange program, and just infuse the university in general with ideas on an international level. Mm-hmm. It's mutually useful for universities to connect with international entities. And as you know, I run the diplomatic program, so I bring consul generals and ambassadors as well as leaders in international business. And You make contacts with the students, the faculty, research areas, and some countries may need some help with research in, say, food production. Others may be interested in bringing English speakers to their country as graduate students, so they can then teach their students the language. There are different needs, and I am a connector of all of these opportunities.
Are there certain convictions that you've mentioned, like fairness and a push towards leadership also among, to promote diversity, including very much women's leadership? Are there certain convictions that fuel that work as well?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I mean, I think it's pretty clear. So when I took this program, it had just started. When I took it to the next level, I did actually notice that we had no female speakers. That has changed greatly, but also with the help of the outside world. I mean, we just have more women ambassadors and consul generals today than we had like 5-6 years ago, which is a good thing.
That's a great thing.
Yes.
How do you make sure you listen when your convictions clash with others?
Well, that's obviously, I would say that's the most important skill of any leader, that sometimes you just shut up. And the more you disagree, the more you just listen. Because you don't want to burst in there and, make the other person not say what they really think. And, if it clashes with your convictions, it is very hard. But you have to accept it. I mean, you should be thankful that people tell you what they really think, so you don't want to stop them from doing that.
To begin with, yes.
Sometimes it's really hard, very, very hard. I mean, I had a Southern gentleman who, turned out to be a big donor to my college, tell me that, and I'm telling you exactly what he said. That he was very old, he was in his 90s, and he believed that it was an easier world when women and black people knew their place. It was easier for the black people and easier for women that, they knew their place. They didn't have to be leaders. They were told what to do, and it just made their life easier because clearly by nature, they were not meant to lead. I also should add at this point that he thought I was a guy. So it made it very interesting. My development officer, who knows how I feel, was fidgeting next to me, like, oh God, I hope she's not going to say anything. I actually managed to keep my mouth shut because I figured, well, he was in his 90s. He wasn't going to be a leader, so he wasn't going to cause any damage. This was just what he believed. But it is good that I listened to him because people tell you what they really think.
Yeah.
And I didn't see any purpose for storming out of the room or,
Of course, yeah. At this point,
it is what it is. Yeah. But yeah.
Interesting.
Yes, it was very interesting.
That actually is very important for the next question. Do you have any advice or a toolkit for people in their 20s about how to deal with their convictions? And how to, in situations like these, for example, when there's clearly a disconnect, and you listen, but young people often have difficulty listening. They're just building their convictions, and they have ideals. Do you have any advice for them?
Yes, I would. So I am obviously the opposite of a Southern belle. So I came to a culture that clashed with mine. I didn't know this right from the start because, my Northern Germanness with being very direct and not accepting lies, and, it was opposite to the Southern culture where, there's more a feeling like they want to protect you from the truth, not upset you. So it was very hard for me to operate. So I really, really learned to be diplomatic and talk to people, engage their interest in affairs before I would come out and you just roll out a program. I would be very carefully gauging the interest level of interest to move this forward. So, just the bad thing about it is it moves it forward very slowly. And in the end, for my personal taste, things didn't move fast enough. And when you come to a point where you feel that your culture is really not meeting the other one, and where you have a lot of resistance to your convictions, you might want to consider walking away and going to a place where you are a better fit in order to be able to really move your conviction forward. So you kind of got to know when enough is enough. On the other hand, when you are like me, very stubborn, and you keep on running into that wall, and you just get up like Sisyphus, and you always, roll that ball or roll that stone back up the mountain, you just have to learn to rely on your own instincts. If you have your conviction and you're getting pushback, you just have to know and be secure in yourself that you're doing the right thing and that you move forward. One thing that where you suffer from is that you can't really grow as a professional in a group of people that are not like-minded, because the feedback you get is not always honest. People have agendas that are political agendas that may not be in line, or are most likely not in line with yours, and that really keeps you, at some point, you stall. At some point, you cannot develop beyond a certain base. You just cannot move forward. So then you either stop, go somewhere else, or you try it from a different angle. Whatever may be your personal preference or strength.
Looking back on your trajectory, what did you do? You moved to a different perspective, or?
I try from a different angle. Yes.
Thank you very much for the conversation.
Well, thank you for your time.
The Conviction Project is part of the Humility and Conviction in Public Life project at the University of Connecticut, created with the generous support of the John Templeton Foundation.